Okay, so 20E is cumulative frequency graph. So there are some graphing. I do have some grid paper if you want to. There's only one on your assignment that you have to graph, but I think it might help if you do use some grid paper. So I've got some of that. We are going to have a stop box as well. And now we have to remember that the cumulative frequency is that running total of the frequency. So you keep adding up the frequency until you get to the total. So it's cumulative, so it includes all of the values that are lower than it. Now we did talk about cumulative frequency in a previous section. I can't remember if it was V1 or V2. It was V2. So we talked about cumulative frequency in the V2 notes if you kind of forget and want more of a refresher of that. So I'm going to zoom in on this graph in a second to kind of go over the parts of it, but this is a cumulative frequency graph. We plot the cumulative frequency and then join the points in a smooth curve. So it's got like a curved type shape. I don't think that you need to necessarily have like all the little marks on this or anything, but I am going to talk about like how we do, like how you would set it up a little bit here. I'll zoom in on it in a second. So one thing you'll notice is that whatever we're measuring goes along the x-axis. In this case, it's the heights of seedlings. So the heights are going on our x-axis, but this could be ages, it could be length, it could be something else like that as well. It could be money. So whatever it is we're measuring goes along the x-axis. You know, our data values, whether it's cumulative or not cumulative, whether it's discrete or not. And then the cumulative frequency is what goes on the y-axis. So we're going to do a bunch of examples, but what we can kind of look at is that, let's say we take 50. So when the total of 50 seedlings would be at 9 centimeters or lower. So we can use this graph saying, okay, at 50 seedlings, there's 50 seedlings that are, where are we at, 9 centimeters or shorter, something like that. Or you could say, like, how many seedlings are 6 centimeters or shorter. So I would start at 6, going up, so a little bit more than 15, so maybe like 16 seedlings are 6 centimeters and shorter. So there is a little bit of estimation about doing this. I would definitely, when you are doing it, you know, when you're graphing it, use some lines, and I'll show you that in a little bit as well, to match this stuff up. So that's one way we'll use this graph. Can also be helpful with percentile. So remember, a percentile is a score which a certain percentage of data lies at or below. So I know you guys got percentiles on your ACT scores, right? So like, if you, for this example, it says if your test score is in the 65th percentile, then 65% of the test takers scored the same or less than you. So like, if you looked at that, there'd be 65% of the people that took that test either got the same grade as you or got a grade lower than yours. On the flip side, that would mean that 35% of test takers got a score higher than you. Does that make sense where I got that 35 from? So we can use this graph and use what we know about calculating percentages in order to, you know, find out, you know, different percentile scores. along with percentile, I know you guys wrote this down in your notes on Friday, but remember that the lower quartile is at the 25th percentile, the median's at the 50th percentile, and the upper quartile is at the 75th percentile. So you might have a question that says, what is the lower quartile? You'll have to remember that it's at the 25th percentile. So then you'll figure out, okay, what's 25%? And then you'll have to go and see what that value is that's at the 25th percentile for that quartile. So we are going to go over an example. We're going to have a cumulative frequency graph and answer a bunch of questions. I don't know how easy it's going to be to jot it all down and draw the graph and everything. So just make sure you're paying attention to how I'm doing, how I'm solving it, so that you can jot some notes down about that. So here is the graph we're going to look at. So it is exam scores. I'm going to zoom in on it just a touch here. So it is exam scores. The x-axis are the marks. Marks are like points. I think in the IB, instead of saying that a test is out of 20 points, they would say 20 marks. So this test, students got anywhere from 20 marks right to 90 marks right. And then remember, this is our cumulative frequency. So we're not quite up to 160. So how many students total do you think took this test? It's between 140 and 160. I don't know, what do you guys think? 150? So we're going to use the total of 150. Because see right here, it's not quite at 160, so it looks like it's about in between, about 150. You guys are seeing where that's coming from? So there is some estimation on this. So when you guys do this, check your answers, especially if it's a graph you draw yourself. Your answers might be off a little bit. So if you're off, go back and just recheck your work to make sure you didn't make a mistake, and then you might be a little bit off. On a test, for example, we're going to give you a graph that has a lot more tick marks. So there'll be less room for error, because here we don't have all those little tick marks, right? We don't have 20 little tick marks to match up with. So on your test, it won't be so ambiguous. But for on your assignment, you might have to deal with a little bit of that. Okay, so then again, just for an example, let's see. So about 110 students scored 70 or below. You guys see how I kind of looked at that? So if here is 110 students, got 70 marks right or less. Now that's just a random example I'm making up. We're going to get some questions with the same graph, but just to kind of again show you how we can take a look at that, we can see that about how many students got 40 or less. I could go like this and say, all right, I would say about 15 students got 40 or lower marks right. By following that and looking over here, that's about 15. So those are just sort of random things, but we are going to have the same chart for the rest of our questions. Starting with finding the median examination mark. I'm just going to try and zoom this in, so if it goes away, we'll get it back. Come on, here we go. The median examination mark. Well, what percentile was median? 50. So the median is at 50% of, and so half of our total, well, remember our total was 150. So what is 50% of 150? Half of 150? 75. So we're looking at 75 for our median. So that's 75% 75 students would be where our median is at. So looking right in here, that's 75, so it's a little bit higher. So we have to keep going over then. And then we go down. So it looks like it's just a little bit more than 60. So what was the middle examination mark? A little bit more than 60, what would you guys say? Like 61 or 62? I went with 62, but that's why I'm saying that your answers might be just slightly off, right? And like this smartboard marker is so chunky that like when you use your pencil, it's going to be a little bit clearer. And again, if you look in the back and we see the answer is 61, like we're okay, right? So when I was looking for the median, that was 75 students was the middle, so I had to go over and down for the marks. So the next question says, how many students scored 65 marks or less? So 65 marks, I have to go to the 65 marks here. So here's 65. Go up to my graph and then come over. So where would we say that's about? About how many students scored 65 marks or less? Where do we think this is about? It's between 80 and 100, close to the middle. About 90. So about 90 students. About 90 students got 65 marks or fewer. So when we're starting off with like the number of students, or when we're starting off with a percentile, we start at the cumulative frequency and then we go down to our marks. But if we're given the number of marks, we have to start at our marks and go up to find our frequency. I know they're not all going to be marks like the one we had earlier with heights, but whatever it is we're measuring. We do have a few more examples to kind of cover all of our bases. Are there questions or concerns? Second hour kind of said that it was easier than I thought it was when I was explaining it. All right. Oh, a little too far here. How many students scored at least 50 but less than 70 marks? So we're looking for sort of a range of scores here. So we're going to have to do a little bit of a subtraction. So we can see how many scored that 70 or lower. So since I'm starting with 70 marks, remember I'd start down here on the marks and then I'd have to go up and over. That's pretty much in the middle, right? 110. So about 110 students got at least 70 right. But we want to take away the students that got 50 right. So I'm going to actually have to go for 50 as well. And that one, that's not quite in the middle. I'd say about 35. Because it looks like it's like 30 would be the middle. I'm going to say that's about 35. So we want to take away these students that scored less than 50. Because 35 students scored less than 50. So I have to do 110 minus 35 to figure out how many students are in this range right here. Because these are the students that got between 70 and 50 on their test. So about 75 students, once I subtract. They do some of this stuff in math studies. I know we've had some people that already took math studies, but I remember helping students with it, and they felt really confused. That's why I thought it was going to be hard, but it sounds like it's not. We have two more that we're going to talk about. Any questions? Okay. So on this test, passing mark is 45. Sorry, I thought I could zoom in on there. Nope. So passing mark is 30 or 45. You got at least 45 right to pass this test. Probably curved or something. So we want to figure out, well, how many students got less than 45? How many students failed? So am I going to be looking for 45 in this cumulative frequency area, or am I going to be looking for 45 in my marks? In your marks, because I want to see, okay, how many people were at 45 marks or not. So I've got 45 right here, so I'll go up to my line and then come on over. So what do you guys think about how many students failed or got less than a 45? 25? Okay. So about 25 students did not pass. And I agree with that. I will tell you, when I drew my lines in second hour, it looked like 30. I do think some of it has to do with, like I said, my chunky smartboard pen. So do your best to, make your lines straight and find that. So about 25 students did not pass that test. We've got one more that's going to do with those percentiles. But are we feeling good? I can't tell if the quiet is you're feeling good or you're just like, whatever. Yeah, but I feel like you're extra quiet right now. Okay. Yeah, probably. Okay, so if the top 16% of students were awarded credits, what's the credit mark? So like, if you got above a 45, you passed the test. But if you got above a certain score, you actually got college credit. That's what the credits part of it is about. So how many were awarded credit? So I need to figure out, like, how much is 16% anyways? So, okay. I know a couple people have asked me about percents, but does anyone know how you can find out how much 16% is? Okay, so how did you come up with that? You're exactly right. That's just how you do it? Okay, well, there's two ways to do it. So I'm going to kind of re-say what Joe said, because I think that's the quickest way to do it. The quickest way to do it would be to turn this into a decimal, 0.16, and then times it by the total. How many total students did we have? 150. So 0.16 times 150. And how much is it? 24. So that's 24 students in the top 16%. We're not done with the problem, but we got that part of it. Now, if that little formula does not work out for you, the other way that you can get the same exact answer of 24 is to use the percent proportion. So we know it's 16%, so we put 16 up here, and then the whole is the whole group, so we put 150 here. This would be our variable, and you would cross multiply and still get the same answer. So that's just an alternative. So now the top 24 students, so that would be 150 minus 24 to figure out where we're going to be. That's at, am I right with 126? So that means 126 did not end up getting that credit. So we still want to find the score, so we'd have to estimate where is 126. I think it's like about here. And then, what do we think? What do we think the credit mark is? Yeah, about 76. So I would say about 76 marks would be that credit mark. We're going to hit the stop box, and then I just have one tip for graphing that I feel like I want to go over with you guys, because we didn't do any graphing up here, but are we okay? So the stop box is if you have any questions. Anything we're not quite sure about? I think one of the best things to do is to actually do it. But before, there is one graphing one. So I just wanted to kind of go over an example. So if you have an interval like this, I'm just going to do part of it here to kind of show you. So this would be like your cumulative frequency. So the first one's 2, then we have to add them up. 2 plus 5 is 7, and then 7 plus 7 is 14. 14 plus 21 is 35. Okay? We've done that before, but we've done that, like I said, in section B. But when you graph these, you're going to use the higher part of the interval here. So 22 would be like the point you're graphing. This one would be 30 and then 7, 40 and then 14, 50 and 35. Just so you know, because this one would be at 0. So your 10 would be at 0. So when it got up to 20, it'd be 2, 30 would be 7, and so on. Just so that when you graph it, you don't get confused about like which points to use as like ordered pairs. So just a little tidbit there. The only one you have to graph, I think, is number 2. So 3 and 5, I believe, have graphs for you. If you do want some grid paper, I've got a bunch here. Especially, like, I was getting all these weird answers, and I think it was because I had my graphs not really spaced out evenly. So it might help you to actually have some grid paper then.